Welcome, restless dreamer. You've just stepped into the shadows of sleep, where stories whisper and the darkness listens. I'm your guide tonight, your voice in the void, here to lead you gently into nightmares wrapped in lullabies. Before we begin, press like if you're brave enough, and subscribe for more midnight tales that blur the line between sleep and terror. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what hour has found you? Ellie Alvarez had 36 hours to find a place before her graduate program orientation started. Craigslist, Facebook groups, even paper flyers at the university library. Nothing. That's when she saw it. Spare room available. Quiet tenant preferred. No pets, no guests. Female only. $400 month. Must respect boundaries. The price was too good to be true. The address was in a quiet neighborhood. Mature trees, ivy on brick walls, old houses that hummed with silence. The woman who answered the door was pale, maybe early 30s, with tight brown curls and a soft, strained voice. I'm Marla. The house smelled like lavender and paper. The spare room was small but clean. Hardwood floors, an old writing desk, twin bed, and a window that looked out over a narrow yard choked with vines. You'll share the bathroom with me, Marla said, guiding Ellie down the hallway. I keep everything labeled. It's how I keep things sane. Ellie nodded. She was too exhausted to care. Marla didn't ask many questions, just slid a printed agreement across the table. Spare room conditions, quiet hours, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. Do not enter my room. Do not touch items labeled M. Do not have guests. Keep all shared spaces clean. Respect the agreement. Ellie signed it. Desperation had a way of skipping red flags. Ellie adjusted quickly to the silence. No TV, no music. Marla barely made a sound. She would disappear into her room by 8 p.m. and emerge the next morning with a perfectly brushed ponytail and a fresh cup of black tea. Ellie only saw her eat crackers and boiled eggs. Labels were everywhere. M, towel. M, mug. M, milk. Marla's handwriting was tight and uniform. The fridge was divided with tape. Marla's food never moved. Her side was surgical. Broccoli florets in glass containers. String cheese aligned like bones. Ellie's side was messier. Leftovers, soda cans, instant ramen. Sometimes Ellie caught Marla watching her. Not directly, but through doorways or the reflection of the microwave glass. The first time it happened, Ellie dropped a fork. You startled me. Marla just blinked. I document patterns. It helps me understand how people behave in confined spaces. Right. At night, Ellie began hearing faint noises. Footsteps. Not across the floor, but in a tight, measured rhythm. One step, pause, another. Sometimes it stopped right outside her door. The first time she opened it, nothing was there. The second time, she found a sticky note stuck to the inside of her bedroom door. You hummed for 3.5 minutes last night. Please maintain silence. Ellie stared at it, heart hammering. When she asked Marla the next morning, she smiled politely. I'm sensitive to sound. The walls are thinner than they look. That night, Ellie wore earbuds and turned on white noise. But in the haze of half sleep, she still heard the steps. Closer now, and slower. It started with a forgotten password. Ellie couldn't remember logging out of her student portal. Then her AirPods vanished. Then her toothbrush felt damp, not wet from water, like it had been inside someone's mouth. She confronted Marla. I haven't been in your room, she said plainly, hands folded. Maybe you misremembered. Are you logging my movements? A flicker. I maintain observations, yes, but not in your private space. That would violate the agreement. Ellie left it alone. But when Marla went out for groceries, a rare trip, Ellie snuck into her room. The door creaked like a scream. Inside, pale walls, spotless floor. No decor, a single bed with hospital corners, and the desk, lined with notebooks. Ellie flipped one open, then another, and another. 7:02 a.m., subject emerged from room. 7:04 a.m., scratched neck, showed signs of agitation. 7:08 a.m., toast, no butter, same as day 5. 7:10 a.m. Sat in silence, blank stare. Disassociation? She flipped through page after page. Dated weeks before she'd even moved in. Anticipated personality? Passive, anxious, clean. Risk factor? Low. Watch for signs of confrontation. One line was underlined in red. Subject must remain unaware. Ellie shoved the books back and raced out, locking the door behind her. Ellie packed a go bag. She stayed out late, left early. She barely spoke to Marla, but that didn't stop the late-night scratching at her door. Delicate, rhythmic, like fingernails dragging down wood. One night, she recorded it. The next morning, the file was gone. That evening, her room smelled faintly of bleach. When she went to confront Marla, her door was ajar. Ellie peeked in. The room was empty. No bed, no desk, no notebooks. Just four walls. Bare. Marla appeared behind her. "I've decided to terminate the agreement," she said. Ellie nodded, heart pounding. I was going to say the same." Marla didn't blink. "Please be out by midnight." 11:47 p.m. Ellie's Uber was 13 minutes away. She sat on her bed, suitcase packed, pepper spray in hand. Then she noticed it, her closet door slightly open. She never left it open. Ellie stood and inched toward it. With one hand she pulled it wide. At the back, where her hanging clothes once were, the wall was cut open. A hole, rough and square. Beyond it, total black. She dropped to her knees, squinting. A monitor blinked to life. A live feed of her bedroom. From inside the wall. She turned, heart in her throat, and saw a second camera mounted above the door, hidden in a fake smoke detector. She stumbled backward, and Marla was in the doorway. "You weren't supposed to find that," she said calmly. "Now I can't observe you objectively. You're insane." "No, I'm curious. You were reacting so beautifully to stress, but now you've contaminated the data." Ellie lunged for the pepper spray. Marla grabbed her wrist. They struggled, slamming into the dresser. The canister fell. Ellie kicked her off and bolted down the hall. The front door was chained from the inside. She screamed, clawing at it. Marla's footsteps approached. Ellie grabbed a lamp and swung. It hit with a dull crack. Marla collapsed. Blood pooled fast. Ellie fumbled with the chain, opened the door, and ran into the street as headlights approached. 3 months later, Ellie lives in a studio apartment above a bakery. She keeps every light on, sleeps with the door locked, a chair jammed under the knob. The landlord thinks she's paranoid. Maybe she is. They said Marla survived the attack. She was charged with stalking, false imprisonment, and unauthorized surveillance. But no one's found the footage, or the other notebooks. Sometimes, Ellie wakes up at 3:17 a.m. to a soft sound. Not from outside, from inside her closet, like someone scratching on the wall, watching, recording, still curious, still documenting her next move. It started with a listing that seemed too good to be true. $400 a month for a fully furnished bedroom in a 2-bedroom apartment just 10 minutes from campus. Jordan hadn't even bothered with a tour. He'd been couch surfing for 2 weeks after his last lease fell through, and desperation made the decision easy. Carter, the roommate, was quiet and pale, maybe in his early 30s. Thin build, shaggy dark hair, eyes that never quite made full contact. When Jordan showed up with his suitcase, Carter simply nodded, handed him a key, and gave a short tour. Kitchen, shared bathroom, and his room at the far end of the hall. Then, Carter paused in front of a locked door. "This room stays shut," he said. "What's in there?" Jordan asked. "Just don't go in, it's not safe." He said it flatly, with no hint of sarcasm or drama. Then he walked away like the conversation had never happened. For the first week, everything was tolerable. Carter kept to himself. He didn't cook, didn't bring guests over, and mostly stayed locked in his room. Jordan, busy with classes and a part-time job, was fine with the silence. Except the door. It was at the end of the hallway, across from the bathroom. Matte black, unlike the others, and always locked. It had no visible handle on the outside, just a keyhole. Some nights, Jordan swore he heard movement inside, not the creaks of an old building, but something more deliberate, like dragging, like someone pacing slowly across the floor. Once around 3:12 a.m., he heard what sounded like scratching, fingernails against wood. He asked Carter about it again. "I think something's living in there." Carter looked up from his bowl of cereal and replied, "That's why it stays locked." Jordan started recording the hallway at night using his phone. He set it on the ground, propped against a laundry basket. In the morning, he'd watch the footage before class. On the third night, around 3 a.m., something new happened. The footage showed the locked door gently vibrating. A soft tapping began, not loud, but rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. Then the camera went black, not shut off, just complete darkness, like something had covered the lens. When Jordan picked up the phone, it was lying on its back facing the ceiling. A week later, Carter went out for the night. "Back in the morning," he muttered, grabbing his coat. The moment the door shut, Jordan stood in front of the locked room. He held a bobby pin and a tension wrench he'd borrowed from YouTube tutorials. Picking the lock took longer than he expected. The tumblers were old, stubborn, but finally, with a soft click, the lock gave way. The room was pitch black. The air felt colder than the rest of the apartment, like walking into a walk-in freezer. He reached for the light switch. Nothing. Phone flashlight in hand, he stepped inside. The room was a mirror of his own. Same bed, same desk, same clothes piled on the same exact chair in the same corner, but everything was decayed. Water stains bloomed across the ceiling. The carpet was blackened with mold. The bed sheets were torn, slashed like they'd been attacked by wild animals. And on the wall, above the bed, written in bold red letters, "You should not be here." Jordan backed away, his breath caught in his throat. A strange creak came from behind him. He spun around. The door had shut, locked again. He banged on the door, kicked it, screamed for help. Then he heard movement under the bed. It wasn't subtle. It sounded like someone rolling over. The bed creaked. A groan echoed from beneath the mattress. Jordan froze. Slowly he crouched and lifted the edge of the bedspread with trembling fingers. There was nothing there. But when he stood up, the room had changed. It was no longer decayed. It was pristine, perfect. Fresh linens, bright walls, and he was lying in the bed, watching himself. Jordan woke up in his own bed, gasping, covered in sweat. The door down the hall was still shut. Maybe he'd dreamt it all. Maybe he'd fallen asleep during a late study session and hallucinated everything. But when he stepped into the hallway, the air felt wrong again. He opened the photo app on his phone. There it was, the decayed room, the red writing, the mirror version of himself in bed. It hadn't been a dream. That night, Carter returned. Jordan confronted him. I went inside the room. Carter didn't speak for a long time. He set his keys on the counter, sighed, and said, "I hoped you wouldn't." "What is that place?" Carter looked him dead in the eyes. "It's not a place. It's a reflection." "Of what?" "Of you. Of your worst decisions. That room shows what happens if you don't walk away." Jordan didn't understand, but he didn't want to stay either. He moved out 2 days later, found a new apartment, blocked Carter's number. But the room followed him. It showed up in his dreams first. The tapping, the mold, the message on the wall. Then, in his new place, he noticed something. A new door had appeared at the end of the hallway, one he swore hadn't been there before. No handle, just a keyhole. And every night at 3:12 a.m. he hears it tapping. Tap, tap, tap. When Dana's roommate Mia suddenly left for Europe for an open-ended travel opportunity, Dana had to find someone fast to help cover rent. The apartment wasn't cheap, and her final year of college was already tight. So when Victor replied to her ad, clean-cut, calm, soft-spoken, she agreed to let him move in after a quick meetup at the cafe downstairs. He paid the deposit in cash, showed her a valid, if oddly faded, ID, and moved in the next day with just a single duffel bag and an old wooden mirror frame with no glass. "This is sentimental," he said, gently placing it on the floor of his room. "I don't like mirrors, but I keep this one, just the frame." Dana didn't push. Everyone had their quirks. At first, he was the ideal roommate. He kept the shared spaces tidy, rarely made noise, and never had guests. He was polite, but distant, vanishing into his room for hours. He also never used the bathroom mirror. Not once. Dana found it weird, but in the grand scheme of roommate oddities, it was minor, until it wasn't. It started with the small things. The hallway mirror, an old vintage piece Dana had thrifted, was found turned toward the wall one morning. Dana assumed maybe she bumped it. Then her full-length bedroom mirror tilted inward slightly, even though it had never moved before. Victor's door was always shut. He left early and came back late, and yet Dana would often hear quiet muttering when she passed his room at night. Sometimes she caught the tail end of her name. One evening, Dana was brushing her teeth when the hallway lights flickered. She glanced up, and for the briefest second, her reflection wasn't brushing its teeth. It stood still, watching her. She turned sharply. Nothing behind her. A second later, Victor's door creaked open just slightly. She caught the flash of his eye through the crack. "You okay?" she called, heart racing. No answer. The door slowly shut. That night, curiosity got the better of her. While Victor was out, Dana stepped into his room. It smelled of wood polish and something sharp, metallic. His bed was neatly made, and no personal items were visible except the mirror frame, still leaning against the wall. It looked older than she remembered. Deep claw-like gouges marred the wooden edges, and a strange symbol was burned into the back. Some sort of glyph or sigil she didn't recognize. Carved below it were initials, M.R., Mia Rivera, her old roommate. Her stomach dropped. As she backed away, Dana's hand brushed against a stack of papers tucked between the mattress and wall. She pulled one out. It was a list. Dana brushes hair at 9:15 p.m. Dana talks in sleep. Dana does not remember scratching sounds. There were dozens of pages, daily logs, observations, even dreams she'd had, private thoughts she hadn't shared with anyone, and all of them were dated before Victor moved in. Dana locked her bedroom door that night. She didn't sleep. At 3:14 a.m., she heard footsteps in the hallway. They stopped at her door. Then, a soft knock. She held her breath. The doorknob jiggled gently. Then silence. Minutes passed before she crept to the door and looked through the peephole. No one. Just the faintest creak, like a door slowly swinging closed somewhere down the hall. She turned back and screamed. In her bedroom mirror stood Victor, but he wasn't in the room. His reflection was smiling, eyes wide, unmoving, just watching her. She covered the mirror with a sheet and sat awake until dawn. The next morning, Dana went to the leasing office. "I need to talk about my roommate," she said. The landlord, an older man named Mr. Carroll, frowned. "You mean the one who moved out?" "What?" "No. Victor." Mr. Carroll blinked. "Miss Rivera moved out 3 months ago. Nobody's been added to the lease. There's no Victor listed here." Dana showed him a photo. He turned pale. "I've seen that face before, years ago, when the apartment was still under old management. That man, he wasn't a tenant. He was part of some complaint about strange activity in 2B. That's my unit," Dana whispered. When she returned home, Victor's door was open, empty. The bed was stripped. The mirror frame was gone. No trace he'd ever lived there, except the papers, which were now stacked on her pillow, perfectly aligned. She packed a bag and left that night. A week later, a mirror arrived at her new apartment in a flat, unmarked box. Just the frame. Old wood, carved with claw marks and initials. D.A., her own. She threw it in the dumpster. But that night, when she looked in her bathroom mirror, she caught it. A second reflection behind her, grinning wide. Victor. When I first moved to Albuquerque, I wasn't looking for luxury, just a place quiet enough to work and cheap enough to not drain my dwindling savings. I was a freelance animator, working on motion graphics for indie filmmakers, and I spent most of my days hunched over a laptop in a dark room. The listing said, private room, utilities included, quiet roommate, safe neighborhood. I met Tyler at a nearby diner. He looked ordinary, pale, wiry, with neatly combed brown hair and a calm, deliberate way of speaking. He worked night shifts at a cleaning company, contracted by a biotech firm, and he seemed genuinely uninterested in small talk, which suited me just fine. We shook hands. 2 days later, I moved in. The apartment was small but neat. 2 bedrooms, 1 shared bathroom, a creaky balcony, and an old HVAC unit that moaned during the night like it was in pain. Tyler's room was always closed, and mine became my cave. We had a mutual respect. I stayed out of his way. He stayed out of mine. For the first month, it worked. But then I started noticing the noises. They were subtle at first. A light shuffling at night. Then scratching. I assumed it was rats in the walls or some raccoon on the roof. But the scratching came from inside the vents. The building was old, sure. But one night, while working late, I paused my music and leaned in closer. The sound was rhythmic, like breathing. Wet, labored breathing echoing from the vent below my desk. I told myself it was the wind, maybe condensation, or the AC struggling against the desert heat. Then the smell started. Rot. Not garbage or forgotten food. Actual decay. I cleaned everything, even bought odor absorbers. But the smell always returned after midnight, strongest around the vents. Tyler wasn't around much. He'd leave at 7 p.m. sharp, wearing black cargo pants, gloves, and a baseball cap. He said the lab was strict about contamination. Fair enough. But he'd sometimes return around 2 a.m., sometimes not at all. And there were nights when I'd wake up and hear the front door rattle, then stop. One night, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, something quick and low darting across the hallway from the bathroom to Tyler's room. When I looked, the hallway was empty, but the vent cover near the floor was unscrewed. I started asking questions. Hey, have you been hearing weird noises at night? He didn't look up from his cereal. Just the pipes, old place. And the smell? He shrugged. Something died in the walls, probably. He wasn't worried. In fact, he seemed comfortable. The next day, I bought a mini camera off Amazon. It looked like a USB charger, but recorded in 1080p. I plugged it into the outlet facing the hallway, just in case. That night, I stayed up watching the feed on my phone. At 1:37 a.m., the hallway light flicked on. Tyler hadn't come home. From the left side of the screen, something slid into frame. I froze. It was humanoid, tall, too thin, skin the color of raw meat, eyes completely black and unblinking. Its limbs were bent wrong, like it had too many joints. It crawled out of the vent by the floor, unfolded itself to full height, then shuffled toward Tyler's room. The camera glitched, static filling the screen for a second. When the feed returned, the hallway was empty. The next morning, Tyler was home, freshly showered, sitting on the couch, watching sports. I didn't say a word. I checked the footage again, but the camera had auto-overwritten it during the night. I cursed myself for not backing it up, but I knew what I saw, and I knew it wasn't human. Over the next week, I pretended everything was fine. I acted casual, even offered to pick up groceries, just to keep things normal. But I installed more cameras, one in the living room, one pointed at the balcony, and one inside my own room, facing the vent. 2 nights later, I woke to a cold breeze on my face. The window was shut. The door was locked. The vent cover lay on the floor. I grabbed my phone and checked the feed. At 3:11 a.m., the vent cover began to rattle. Slowly, something slid out. It wasn't Tyler. It was the same creature, or maybe another. Its eyes darted toward the bed, toward me. Then it crawled back into the vent, dragging something that looked like a pile of wet towels. I packed that morning. I told Tyler I was moving for a job out of state. He just nodded, didn't even ask which state. But before I left, I copied the last week of camera footage to a flash drive and took it to a private investigator I found online. He was ex-cop, specialized in missing persons. A week later, he called. "You need to get out of Albuquerque, today." "What did you find?" "That apartment complex? 6 tenants have gone missing in the last 4 years, all filed as runaways or unresolved disappearances. 3 of them lived in the same unit you just moved out of. Did you look into Tyler?" Pause. "There is no record of anyone named Tyler renting that apartment. Not on the lease, not on utility bills. But he lives there. I pulled property records. That unit was empty for almost a year before you moved in. The management company swears they only leased it to you." My blood ran cold. "What about the footage?" He hesitated. "There was something on it. I sent it to a friend in federal forensics. He told me to delete everything and never contact him again." "What did it show?" Another pause. "Whatever came out of that vent wasn't wearing skin. I changed my number, left the state. I sleep in motels now. 1 night here, 1 night there. I don't rent. I don't unpack. I never stay above the first floor. And I don't trust locked doors. Because I know now. The locks never mattered." Courtney Wright stared at the blinking cursor on her laptop screen. Her nursing degree hung proudly on the wall, but the rent prices in Chicago were anything but encouraging. She needed a place, fast, cheap, and safe. Her hospital shifts had started, and commuting from her aunt's couch in Aurora was already breaking her spirit. Then she saw it. Private room in historic home, safe neighborhood, all utilities included, 550 a mower, female tenants preferred. She clicked. The house was gorgeous. Brick exterior, tree-lined street, spacious room, and a cozy living room. The photos looked too good to be true. The listing was posted by someone named Carl E. Andrews, age 54. No roommates. Just Carl. Her gut tensed, but her wallet was emptier than her pride. Carl answered the door wearing an ironed polo shirt and a faint cologne scent. The home was even cleaner than in the pictures, like a hotel, not a lived-in space. Everything was spotless. Doilies on the tables, lemon polish in the air. "You're even more professional than your messages," he said, shaking her hand. "I like order, cleanliness, and I don't like loud music or overnight guests. That's all I ask." "Fair enough." He showed her the room. Queen bed, full closet, soft lighting, a single camera-looking device on the wall. "What's that?" she asked. "Oh, just an air freshener," Carl said. "I like lavender. Keeps the place calm." She moved in that weekend. The first 2 weeks went smoothly. Carl cooked dinner once in a while. Nothing creepy, just meatloaf or pasta. They mostly kept to themselves. He left passive-aggressive sticky notes like, "Please wipe down the faucet after use. Shoes go on the rack, not beside it," but nothing alarming. Courtney figured it was just a lonely older man who liked routine. Then one night, she forgot to take her scrubs out of the dryer. The next morning, a note was on her bedroom door. "I noticed your clothes left unattended. Kindly be more responsible. I don't like messes. This is your warning." Her stomach sank. She hadn't heard the dryer buzzer. How did he even know? Unless it started subtly. She'd hear footsteps when Carl wasn't home. Lights turned off by themselves. Her laptop, once in her backpack, would be on her desk, open. One night she opened the air freshener out of curiosity. It wasn't one. Inside was a tiny camera. She pulled out her phone and recorded a video of it, just in case. Then she began searching the house. By midnight, she had found 2 more hidden cameras, one in a vent cover above the hallway, another inside a fake plant in the bathroom. Courtney's mouth went dry. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. She waited for Carl to get home. The door creaked at 9:17 p.m. He walked into the kitchen casually, unaware of the storm gathering in her chest. "You've been recording me," she said quietly, holding up her phone with the video of the camera. Carl froze. Then he smiled. Not embarrassed, Not guilty, calm, too calm. I told you, he said, pouring himself tea. I like order, people lie, but footage doesn't. She backed away. You're sick. Carl's eyes sharpened. No, Courtney. I'm careful. I've had 5 tenants. You're the first to catch on. That phrase. 5 tenants. Her blood ran cold. While Carl showered that night, Courtney crept to the basement. The door wasn't locked. She flipped the switch. A folding table sat in the center, stacked with labeled SD cards. Each was marked with names and dates. Emily, Jordan, Leah, Maeve. Her stomach twisted. There were photos too, printed on glossy paper and pinned to a corkboard. Women sleeping. Women brushing their teeth. Women undressing. She found a drawer filled with their IDs. Their faces smiled up from expired driver's licenses. And at the bottom, a burner phone with screenshots of her social media. Photos of her in nursing school, taken long before she moved in. Carl had picked her. She ran back upstairs, heart hammering. Carl was out of the shower, standing at the foot of the stairs. You found it, he said, still wrapped in a towel like they were discussing laundry. Courtney bolted toward the front door. He lunged, but she ducked under his grasp, yanked open the door, and nearly fell into the arms of Officer Brooks, who was knocking for a noise complaint from a neighbor. Carl froze. Courtney, wild-eyed and shaking, pointed inside. Cameras, photos, IDs, basement. The officer drew his weapon. Carl didn't resist. It took hours to collect evidence. Carl was arrested on multiple charges: unauthorized surveillance, stalking, possession of personal identification. The full charges kept growing. Courtney moved into a studio the next week. Small, overpriced, a little musty, but it was hers. And she checked the vents, and the plants, and every air freshener. Even still, she sometimes woke up certain someone was watching her. One night, 3 weeks later, a package arrived at her door. No return address. Inside was an SD card. She didn't have to plug it in to know what was on it. I found the apartment through a university housing board post. 2-bedroom, utilities included, quiet space, 10-minute walk from campus. It seemed perfect for my junior year. Affordable, close to classes, and just far enough from the chaos of the dorms. My last roommate had been a nightmare, loud, messy, and constantly throwing parties. This time, I wanted peace. Stephen was already living in the apartment. He was a thin guy in his mid-30s, pale skin, deep-set eyes, and a way of speaking softly, like every word cost him something. We met at a quiet coffee shop near campus. He told me he worked night shifts at a pharmaceutical lab across town and valued peace more than anything else. If you're someone who blasts music or talks on speakerphone, this won't work, he said. I assured him I kept to myself. I was an architecture major, always juggling studio hours and projects. He nodded, and by the end of the meeting, we'd agreed I'd move in the following week. At first, things were fine. Stephen stuck to his strange hours, gone by sunset and back before dawn. Our schedules rarely overlapped, and when they did, he was polite but distant. He kept the place spotless, his room tucked away at the end of the hall, the door always shut. But after the first couple of weeks, things got weird. It started with the notes, small scraps of paper left in unusual places. The first was tucked under my cereal bowl. Please don't use the microwave after 10 p.m. The beeping travels. I shrugged it off and made an effort to be quieter. Then came more notes, each increasingly specific. Typing is loud after midnight. Consider rubber keycaps. Or, your footsteps near the bathroom echo more than you think. The notes escalated in frequency and tone. I once found one inside my pillowcase. Even dreams can be loud. The handwriting was tight and slanted, each letter carefully formed. What disturbed me more was the precision. He knew when I used the kitchen, when I opened my laptop, even when I boiled water. Then came the interference. My alarm started malfunctioning. I'd set my phone to wake me for early classes, only to find the alarm had been disabled entirely. I initially blamed software updates or user error, But one night I watched the alarm icon vanish right before my eyes. I hadn't touched the screen. Another time, I woke to find my laptop password changed. I managed to reset it using my phone, but it unnerved me. I hadn't told anyone the password. No one else should have access. My headphones cut in and out. My Bluetooth speaker refused to connect. At first, I assumed coincidence, maybe interference. But the more I noticed the patterns, the more paranoid I became. I installed a cheap motion-activated camera facing my bedroom door. I needed proof. The next morning, the SD card was missing. Then I began waking at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night. No noise, no reason. Just a cold bolt of fear running through me as if something was in the room, something watching. I started sleeping with the lights on. I confronted Stephen casually, pretending it was a joke. "You ever feel like this place has weird vibes?" He looked up from his cereal. "Silence has a shape. Most people never notice." "What do you mean?" "Noise leaves scars. You just have to know where to look." I laughed awkwardly. "Right." He didn't laugh. That night, I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate. I stayed still, barely breathing. The knob twitched. I bolted upright and flipped on the lights. Nothing. Silence. The next morning, there was a note taped to my desk. "You were awake. That's good. Awareness is the first step." I decided I needed to get out. I started looking for other housing, even if it meant couch surfing. But it was mid-semester, and everything affordable was gone. Then, one night, I woke up to find my closet door wide open. I always closed it. Always. My breath caught. Inside the closet, barely visible in the dark, was a figure. I scrambled for the lamp. The figure was gone. Had I imagined it? I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning I found my phone missing. I tore the room apart. Under the bed, behind the dresser. Gone. 2 days later it was back, sitting on my pillow. Everything wiped, except for one file. A video. It was a clip of me sleeping, from inside the room. At the very end of the video, the camera shifts slightly, as if being set down. A shape appears in the background, just for a second. Tall, thin, watching. I went to the police. They took my statement, but without physical evidence, there wasn't much they could do. The officer who took my report said, "It sounds like you're dealing with someone extremely obsessive." I moved out the next day, took a duffel bag of clothes and a few books and stayed with a friend off campus. A week later, I went back to retrieve the rest of my things. Stephen was gone. The apartment was empty. No furniture, no notes, nothing. The landlord said Stephen had broken the lease and left in the middle of the night. I never saw him again. But about 3 months later, a package arrived at my new address. No return label. Inside was a small recorder. One button, play. I hesitated, then pressed it. My own voice, distorted, as if recorded through a wall. "You ever feel like this place has weird vibes?" Then Stephen's voice. "Noise leaves scars. You just have to know where to look." Silence. Then something else. Heavy breathing. Close. Too close. As if someone was behind me. The recording clicked off. These days, I live alone in a building with concrete walls and 24-hour security. I don't use alarm clocks. I leave music on at night. But sometimes, when I wake in the dark, I feel that stillness again. Like the air is waiting. Like the silence is watching. By the time Lily Torres found the sublet in Brooklyn, she was exhausted. 3 weeks of couch surfing, overpriced rentals, and catfished listings had drained her optimism and her savings. So when a Craigslist ad listed a garden-level brownstone apartment just 4 blocks from her grad school, with utilities included, she jumped at it. Judith, the landlord, was in her late 60s and had the clipped, no-nonsense manner of a woman who'd lived in the building her entire life. "The upstairs tenant's quiet," she said as she led Lily through the dim entryway. "Odd guy. Works in tech. Keeps to himself." Lily liked that. After months of noisy roommates and communal bathrooms, she craved silence and privacy. The unit wasn't perfect, small, a bit dark, but it was clean, cool, and smelled faintly of old wood and lavender detergent. The walls were thick brick, and the window overlooked a fenced-in garden tangled with ivy. She signed the lease the same afternoon. Her first few weeks were a haze of lectures and library visits. Owen, the upstairs tenant, remained a mystery. She only caught one brief glimpse of him at the mailbox, a pale man with oversized glasses, dressed in neutrals, carrying a worn messenger bag. He nodded once, then disappeared before she could say hello. At night, she sometimes heard the faint click of a keyboard or soft pacing. No music, no voices, just a rhythm of quiet movements, like clockwork. It was comforting in a way. But then the electronics started acting up. It began with her smart TV turning on by itself at 2:14 a.m. No input, just static. Then her laptop refused to sleep, glowing faintly after she shut it. Her phone would randomly ask for logins she hadn't used in weeks. Her fitness tracker buzzed one night, logging steps while she lay perfectly still. She brushed it off. A glitch. Ghost tech. Then she opened her laptop one morning and noticed something strange. A scholarship draft she'd been working on was edited, polished even. Sentences were rearranged, grammar fixed, and tone made more confident. She hadn't touched it in days. She stared at the screen. The timestamp read, edited, 3:12 a.m. That was the same night her TV had flared to life. Her stomach turned. She asked classmates if it could be a sync error, or if Google Docs auto-corrected drafts. Could be a bot, one shrugged. You got hacked, another laughed. Lily changed passwords, ran antivirus scans, and turned on two-factor authentication. But it kept happening. Drafts rewritten, private notes rearranged, Chrome tabs she hadn't opened appearing in her history. Then came the window blinds. Lily always shut them before bed. Always. Yet some mornings, they'd be cracked open an inch, just enough to see in. The first time it happened, she blamed herself. The second time, she started locking her bedroom door. One night, while working late on her bed, she noticed her laptop's webcam light blink red, just for a second. She froze, then taped over it with a sticky note. The tipping point came on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Judith called and asked if Lily could check the basement. She thought a pipe was leaking near the back wall. Lily agreed, though she had never been down there. The door was just outside her unit, sandwiched between the stairs to the upper floor and the entrance to her apartment. The basement was musty and unlit except for a single hanging bulb. Boxes and paint cans lined the walls. Toward the far end, something caught her eye. A shelf angled oddly in the corner. Behind it was a door, not old and wooden like the rest, but steel gray, modern, with a keypad. Her heart thudded. The keypad was fake. When she pushed gently, the door opened. Behind it, a small room. Hum of electricity. Smell of dust and plastic. Inside, dozens of monitors were mounted to metal racks. Most were off. 3 were on. One showed her bedroom, one her living room, one the bathroom, angled down from the ceiling vent. Her blood ran cold. Her face was on the screens, sleeping, brushing her hair, reading in bed. The footage was live, time-stamped, high resolution. Her knees buckled. She staggered out, slammed the hidden door shut, and sprinted up the stairs and out onto the sidewalk. Rain pelted her face as she ran 5 blocks before ducking into a coffee shop. In the bathroom, she vomited. Then she called the police. At first, the officers didn't take her seriously until she showed them the photos on her phone. Pictures of the monitors, the bathroom feed, the shelves hiding the room. Then they acted quickly. But when they returned to the brownstone, everything was gone. The shelves were back in place. The door was sealed with a real keypad this time. The monitors were gone. The wires stripped clean. No fingerprints. No dust disturbed. Owen was gone too. Detective Serena Tran followed up 2 days later. He doesn't exist, she said. No records for Owen Bishop. Fake ID. No social, no tax documents. Paid in cash. Total ghost. Lily asked about Judith. She said he'd been renting upstairs for a year, never caused trouble, never saw inside his unit. She assumed he worked from home. Lily broke her lease. Judith didn't protest. She checked into a hotel across town, changed all her passwords, got a new phone, new laptop, paid with cash, used burner accounts, no Wi-Fi, only cellular. But the strange activity followed. Apps began logging her out again. Emails appeared partially edited. Her smart devices flickered with energy-saving errors. One night, she turned on her tablet and saw a single file on the desktop, toothbrush.mp4. She clicked it. It was her, brushing her teeth, just the night before. Same pajamas, same hotel bathroom. The camera angle came from behind the mirror. She screamed, moved again, this time across the river, renting a room under a friend's name. Still, the signals returned. A printer she never used came alive at 3 a.m. with pages of blank ink. Her voice assistant, which she'd disabled, asked, "Did you sleep well last night, Lily?" in a robotic male voice. She went to the police again, but there were no devices found, no fingerprints. The hotel's security system was wiped clean. No signs of tampering. She had no physical proof. She tried leaving notes on her screen. "I know you're watching." Once, she came back to find a new file on her laptop. Reply, TIXT. She opened it. "I always was." Lily stopped talking about it. Her friends didn't believe her. The police had done what they could. She began avoiding devices altogether. Went back to using paper notebooks. Paid only in cash. Refused to go online. But nothing helped. The presence, silent and digital, was always near. A soft hum in her charger cord, a phantom vibration in her disconnected phone, cameras she didn't remember owning blinking red for just a moment. The IT guy wasn't upstairs anymore. He was everywhere, and he had never left. The end.